Imagine walking through the marble halls of the Vatican, the golden light of candle sconces reflecting off frescoed ceilings, a place sanctified by centuries of devotion. Now imagine the man at the very center of this sacred world, not as a holy shepherd, but as a teenager indulging in the most depraved acts imaginable. This wasn't a story from a lurid tabloid or a modern scandal. This was the reality of Pope Benedict IX, one of the youngest and most scandalous pontiffs in history. Accounts from the 11th century describe him as a man whose appetites for power and sin blurred every boundary of morality. Theft, rape, murder, orgies, and even bestiality. By the time his story ended, Rome would have enough of this pope's antics to permanently exile him. Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. If you want to uncover the shocking full story of how one pope turned the Vatican into a den of debauchery, stay with me until the end. You won't believe the lengths he went to in pursuit of pleasure and power. Pope Benedict IX was no ordinary pontiff. Born around 1012 into the powerful Tusculani family of Rome, he was elected pope in 1032 at the astonishing age of 20. To put this into context, most popes in history were seasoned clergy in their 50s or 60s, men seasoned by theology, politics, and diplomacy. Benedict's ascent wasn't the result of divine favor or ecclesiastical merit. His father literally bought the papacy, leveraging the influence of his wealthy family. 2 uncles had already sat on the papal throne, Benedict VIII and Pope John XIX, so nepotism was nothing new. But even by the standards of medieval Rome, placing a teenager in charge of the church was reckless. And Benedict IX wasn't ready or willing to behave like a pope. Historians describe him as licentious, impulsive, and dangerously clever. Some chroniclers went as far as to call him a demon from hell in the disguise of a priest. But what exactly did that mean? Let's step inside the scandalous Vatican of Benedict IX. From the moment he took the throne, Benedict IX's behavior shocked Rome. Contemporary sources accuse him of seducing young boys in the Lateran Palace, a horrifying reality for a church that was supposed to be the moral compass of Europe. But sexual misconduct was only the tip of the iceberg. Benedict IX was also accused of theft, violent assaults, and even murder. He reportedly would raid homes and churches, enriching himself while the city turned a blind eye, too afraid or too enthralled to challenge him. And then there were his parties. Accounts describe wild orgies inside the papal palace, a grotesque inversion of the sacred space. The Vatican had become less a sanctuary and more a playground for a teenager who wielded divine authority like a toy. Yet, as shocking as all this was, there was one aspect of his debauchery that truly horrified contemporaries: his occasional indulgence in bestiality. In a city steeped in superstition and religious devotion, the acts of the Pope would have been unthinkable for any normal citizen. But Benedict IX was no ordinary man. Yes, the historical record suggests that Benedict IX spiced up his sexual life with bestiality, a detail so scandalous that chroniclers struggled to write it down. But they did, emphasizing the Pope's complete disregard for both church doctrine and human decency. Imagine the Vatican in the 1030s, a place of worship, learning, and sacred ritual, being transformed into a den of unspeakable debauchery. Benedict IX would host orgies where rules were non-existent, moral boundaries were erased, and every vice imaginable was indulged. It's difficult to overstate how extreme this was. Rome had tolerated corrupt popes before, but Benedict IX's behavior became the stuff of legend. The city murmured about him in fear and disgust, yet he continued to wield power without consequence, at least for a time. So, what finally turned Rome against him? And how did a pope who could excommunicate others eventually lose the papacy himself? That's where his first exile comes into play. By 1044, the Romans had had enough. Pope Benedict IX was exiled from the city, removed from the papal throne, and sent into temporary obscurity. But his story doesn't end there. Just 2 months into the reign of his successor, Benedict IX returned to Rome, not as a supplicant, but as a conqueror. In a move unique in papal history, he excommunicated his replacement and reclaimed the papacy, beginning his second pontificate exactly as he had started the first, surrounded by scandal and debauchery. And yet, even this audacity had limits. By May 1045, the citizens of Rome had grown so disgusted that Benedict IX did something almost unimaginable. He sold the papal throne to his godfather, who became Pope Gregory VI. Imagine a pope literally putting a price tag on divine authority, retiring to a private life and marrying his cousin. If you're shocked by this story so far, you're not alone. But the saga doesn't end here. Benedict IX would return one final time, and this last chapter makes his life even more extraordinary. Before we dive into that, do me a favor, like this video, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the darkest and most twisted tales from history. After selling the papal throne, Benedict IX briefly stepped away from religious life. His retirement was unconventional, to say the least. He married his cousin, attempting a semblance of normalcy. But the lure of power was too strong. Rome, however, had not forgotten the chaotic years of his reigns. His first 2 terms had become synonymous with the Pornocracy, a period marked by sexual corruption, political manipulation, and lawlessness. The memories of those years lingered like a dark shadow over the city, and many citizens feared his return. But fear couldn't prevent the next shocking twist. Benedict IX's third return to the papacy is perhaps the most astonishing moment in church history. Against all expectations, he seized power once more, plunging the Vatican back into chaos. Rome had changed. The citizens were no longer willing to tolerate his excesses. They rebelled, exiling him permanently this time. His legacy was sealed. A pope who, according to his successors, embodied the absolute depths of corruption. Pope Victor III, reflecting on Benedict IX years later, wrote, "As a pope, he was so vile, so foul, so execrable that I shudder to think of it." This chilling assessment captures the fear and revulsion Benedict IX inspired. He wasn't just a scandal, he was a historical warning of what can happen when power is combined with unbridled vice. So, what does Benedict IX's story tell us? On one level, it's a cautionary tale of unchecked power, immaturity, and moral decay. On another, it's a window into the politics of 11th century Rome, where noble families could manipulate the papacy like a commodity, and even a teenager could ascend to one of the most powerful positions in the world. The Pornocracy wasn't just about sex. It was about how personal vice can erode institutions, how corruption can thrive when authority goes unchecked, and how historical memory preserves the scandal for generations. It also reminds us of the human side of history. Behind every title and crown, there is a person capable of both ambition and folly, desire and destruction. Benedict IX's story is extreme, yes, but it is also a story of human imperfection writ on the canvas of the Church. The saga of Pope Benedict IX leaves us with uncomfortable questions. How much power is too much for a single individual? Can institutions survive the excesses of those who lead them? And perhaps most chillingly, how often do the sins of the powerful remain hidden, waiting for the next scandal to emerge? If you found this story as shocking and fascinating as I did, hit like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. And remember, history may judge the mighty, but the curious will always uncover the truth. The Vatican's walls may be sacred, but history shows they've also been witness to some of the darkest chapters of human desire and ambition. Benedict IX wasn't just a pope, he was a warning carved into the annals of time.